7% doesn't tell you that the voters knew what they were voting for and appreciated that?
I didn't say that, Tom. Everybody had probably a different reason, a different provision of the language that was their primary consideration or one of their primary considerations for voting yes. The most important thing I can put out here.
Shout out to the big
consumer experience is uninhibited.
Basically, they ignored the will of the voters. Don't tell me that people didn't know what they're voting for. Voters are smarter than my colleagues want to give them credit for sometimes.
The bill now moves over to the House, which blocked a similar law last year. But here's what's different now. Presiding over the House is House Speaker Matt Huffman. Last session, he was the president of the Senate, which passed that similar bill. So it would seem likely that Huffman would be able to get enough votes to get this thing passed. But for now, it's still going to the House. We're not sure when they will take it up.
So as you guys can see, this is a situation where the voters have voted and the people have spoken, but it seems that the lawmakers are trying to subvert the will of the people. And in particular, one reason that they're citing for that is the increase in crime and also trying to protect the children. We've heard this a number of times before. They're always trying to protect the kids, but they're citing the crime. Actually, Matt Hoffman has been fact-checked when he spoke about this. So let's hop into that because he made that claim and it was false.
They say the legalization leads to increased crime. Fact check, it doesn't. And the GOP leaders say they have a right to change it since they don't think the voters knew exactly what they were voting for.
Problems that are caused by more marijuana being available in the community. We're going to have more crime. We're going to have more addiction problems.
What are you basing that on?
Really? The more alcohol is available, the more people drink, and the more bad behavior results. And that's what happens with marijuana. And other substances that cause people to think poorly.
But marijuana law professor Jonathan Adler corrected House Speaker Matt Huffman.
Certainly don't see evidence of significant negative effects on crime or increases in crime that some people fear. And there's some evidence that suggests at least some sorts of crime may in fact decline. It appears to reduce highway fatalities, appears to reduce some types of violent crime.
So that's really refreshing to see that professionals come out and actually fact check when these false claims are made. And a lot of people push these false narratives, and that sums up to propaganda. And when you're pushing false propaganda, it's usually for a reason. Now, it was great to see that the Ohio GOP lawmaker actually filed a bill to revise the voter-approved laws with less sweeping changes than the Senate-passed measure. And this takes us back to what I was talking about earlier, where we actually got two competing bills right now. So let's have a look at those two competing bills and how they differ.
Ohio lawmakers are pushing forward with changing the state's laws.
For State House reporter Natalie Fahmy joins us now live to tell us what those changes might look like. Natalie?
Jared, Jennifer, there were two competing bills in the Ohio State House right now. One in the Senate that makes drastic changes to the state's law, and a new proposal in the Ohio House that in some ways takes a similar approach, but in others is lighter.
Amanda from Cleveland asked, what are the lawmakers trying to do? There are Senate Bill 56 and House Bill 160. Both make dozens of restrictions to cannabis access, but most notably, SB 56 limits THC content and reduces home growing to 6 plants. HB 160 also limits THC, but keeps home growing the same. Marty from the Sandusky area commented, wondering why the lawmakers are even making these changes.
House Bill 160 is sponsored by Representative Brian Stewart. He says he wants to make changes to the recreational marijuana law without ignoring the will of the voters.
When this is marketed as regulate like alcohol, we're doing that here.
While the bill does not go as far as restricting home grow, as its counterpart in the Senate does, or increasing taxes on recreational marijuana, as was considered, the House bill caps the number of dispensaries allowed in the state at 350, and only makes it legal to smoke on your private residence. Plus, it decreases legal THC levels by 20%.
What's your basis for decreasing the THC level? Is that something that you've heard that constituents want?
If you look at, states that have legalized marijuana, they're all over the map. Some are at 60%, some are at 70%, some are less than that. So I believe Michigan is at 70%. So to have us at 70% would be competitive with other states.
We don't think that this is necessarily a potency argument, but a purity one. Anytime that you are taking the potency down like that, you're adding in other fillers to products, and we don't think that's beneficial to consumers.
The legislation also requires that any Delta 8 products, sometimes known as diet weed, be sold in dispensaries. Right now, the product can be sold anywhere and with no age restriction. There is bipartisan motivation to get that done.
whether it's a full out